What's going on, Bama Nation, College Football Nation? This is Gen716 back here again. And today, I want to talk to you guys my initial reactions about the college football playoff rankings. They just released today. And of course, because then you guys can see from the hats, Alabama's ranked 5th, 4th is Georgia, 3rd is Clemson, number 2 is Ohio State, and number one is LSU, as I expected, and I think what all Alabama fans expect now. Now the debate was, should Oregon or Utah be ahead of Alabama? And Alabama, if they were at 6th or at 7th, I think that they're done. So at the playoff committee, as far as everything is right now, I think the college football playoff committee, I think they're telling us that, listen, Alabama, they're not going to be punished, at least this week, because they played against the number 1 ranked team in the nation, LSU. Now, I also think that there is a path for Alabama to get into the college football playoffs. Before, everyone will give them maybe a 10%, maybe 15% chance. I give Alabama a 40% chance of making it to the college football playoffs. Now, I don't think that they control their own destiny, but I definitely believe that there is a path for Alabama to get into the college football playoffs. Now, there are a lot of scenarios there's a bunch of scenarios that has to happen. I think that the scenario that's really going to help Alabama out is if Auburn beats Georgia. Now, Bama fans, I know that, listen, we're supposed to hate Auburn. I hate Auburn. That's fine. But if you want Alabama to get into the college football playoffs, you got to root for Auburn to beat Georgia. Because if they beat Georgia, Auburn climbs up to the top 10. Maybe, matter of fact, they'll actually be even higher because Georgia is the 4th ranked school. And also because Auburn beat Oregon, that's also going to escalate them up the polls. Or Auburn might be 7th. They might be either 7th or they might be 6th. They might even slide Alabama down. It's uncertain, but Auburn's going to get a huge boost up if they beat Georgia next week. That's two top 10 opponents that they've played against. LSU. I'm sorry, 2 top 10 opponents that they played against. They faced LSU, they faced Florida. They're going to get a boost up. Now, Alabama plays Auburn on the road. We all know it's the Iron Bowl. It's one of the 2 biggest games as far as rivalries in all of college football. And if Alabama dominates Auburn in the Iron Bowl, how can you deny Alabama to getting into the college football playoffs? Listen, I understand that Oregon plays Utah for the Pac-12 championship, but I think when the committee is trying to have that debate between Alabama, Utah, Oregon, who has Utah played against? They've played against nobody, right? People say that Alabama hasn't played against anybody. Alabama's played against at least 2 quality good opponents. Utah hasn't played against anybody, right? We've seen them struggle in the past. They lost to USC in the Coliseum. Now, Oregon, if you look at Oregon's schedule, Oregon has also had a kind of a struggling type of schedule. Now, if you look at Oregon's schedule, they struggled against Cal. They struggled against Stanford. They struggled against Washington and Washington State. They've had their best win on that schedule was a 5-4 USC football squad that lost to BYU. So how can we sit here and say that Utah and Oregon are better than Alabama? Because at the end of the day, it's about who are the 4 best teams, not the most deserving. Who are the 4 best teams in college football? And clearly, I think looking at what the college football playoff committee thinks, even though that Alabama is on the outside looking in, Bama is higher than Oregon and Utah. So I think that they highly think that Alabama is still an elite football squad. They still think that Alabama has a great shot of getting in it. And Alabama right now has a great position. Even though they're ranked 5, Georgia has Auburn, they have Texas A&M, and then, of course, they got the SEC championship game. So they have 3 tough opponents they have 3 games where they could easily get upset in each and every single one of those games, right? So, Georgia fans, I don't think that Georgia will make it. I'm sorry. I don't think they're making it. I think that they just have too much of a tougher path. I think Auburn coming off a bye week, despite them now having an offense, Georgia's offense has struggled, and they're going to be playing against the best defense they've played against all year round in Auburn. That's a rested, healthy Auburn defense that now is going to be coming into this one with a lot of motivation because they're still alive for the college football playoffs despite them even having 2 losses. They have Bama and Georgia on their schedule. So if they beat those two teams Auburn has a great chance to get in as a 2-loss football squad. So to be honest with you, I have Auburn upsetting Georgia. I think that that's the loss. And even if Georgia gets by there, I have LSU beating Georgia in the SEC championship game. Now, of course, if Georgia gets into the SEC championship game and they win it all, and they win it all, Georgia's going to make it to the college football playoffs. But so is LSU. So that's how the SEC is going to have 2 SEC schools. So I'm a Bama fan, so I'm sorry, Georgia, I gotta root against you. I like you, but I gotta root against you. Because we cannot allow 2 SEC teams unless we're in it. I'm sorry. But yeah, everybody, a path is open for Alabama to make it into the college football playoffs. They have to win out. They have to really dominate Auburn. They have to hope that Auburn beats Georgia. Not just saying that even if Auburn loses to Georgia, it's gonna hurt Bama a little bit, but it's not gonna hurt them a lot because Auburn's still gonna be a ranked football squad. And at the end of the day, Auburn beat Oregon in the beginning of the season in a neutral site football field. I think that's really where it really helps Bama too. It's not like this was in Auburn. It's not like this was even in Oregon. This was on a neutral site football stadium. And at the end of the day, right, the playoff committee looks at we're looking at the 4 best teams, but on a neutral site football field, who's going to win it? Who's better? Who are the 4 best teams? And at the end of the day, Auburn beat Oregon on a neutral site football field. Now, could Oregon beat Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson on a neutral site football field? I'm sorry, I don't think so. I don't think so. And looking at Oregon's schedule, like I talked about before, struggle victory against Stanford, struggle victory against Cal, struggle victory against Washington State, and struggle victory against Washington. I said Washington and Washington State, but yeah, 4 struggle victories. Their best victory was against USC. Now, if they blow out Utah in the Pac-12 championship, that's a different story and that's a different debate. Matter of fact, I will actually kind of lean towards Oregon for as far as the playoff committee choosing them, because I think that if you look at 2014, Ohio State was in a very similar situation with debating against Baylor and TCU, and at the end of the day, that dominant 59-0 victory against Wisconsin got them in it. Otherwise, Baylor and TCU, one of those 2 squads was going to get in. So yeah, there are a lot of scenarios. I think Oklahoma, they have to lose. Oklahoma, I think they're ranked 10th, but what's going to help Oklahoma, Texas is ranked, Oklahoma State's ranked, and Baylor is ranked. They'll have 3. Potentially, they can play Texas again in the Big 12 championship, even though it's highly unlikely. Kansas State is also ranked. So their loss was against a ranked opponent in Kansas State. So Oklahoma is going to have more ranked opponents at the end of the day compared to Oregon, Bama, or Utah. Now, Oklahoma, we want to talk about Oklahoma's schedule. Man, they have really struggled with the opponents that they've played against. Losing to Kansas State and then coming off a bye week and then getting this close to losing to Iowa State again. If that quarterback, if Brock Purdy would have just saw that tight end on a zig, I mean, he was wide open in the end zone, we're having a different conversation, and Oklahoma is no longer in the discussion. They're out. But Oklahoma has a lot to go for them because of their schedule with Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and then potentially facing Baylor twice in the Big 12 championship. That's really going to help Oklahoma's case. They're also going to have to dominate those games too, right? It can't be any 42-41 type of games. Looking at they're 10th right now. They won and Minnesota jumped all those spots above Oklahoma. I think that the playoff committee is clearly telling us that, listen, Oklahoma, you're going to have to put a better performance in order to convince us that you're in it. So I think Oklahoma, they're going to have to dominate some of those games, some of those ranked opponents, the Oklahoma States and the Baylors in the world. They're going to have to dominate those football games in order for the playoff committee to be impressed. So, yeah, I think the blueprint is laid out for Alabama to get in. I mean, they have to win all their games. They're gonna have to, they got to beat Auburn. But I think to even help their case even more, they're gonna have to dominate Auburn. Georgia, I think, has to lose to Auburn, because I think that it will really help Alabama's case, because Auburn will be a top 10 ranked opponent, maybe even a top 8 ranked opponent by the time Bama plays Auburn. And if that happens, and if Bama dominates Auburn, I think I think the percentage goes from maybe 40% to maybe even 50, maybe even 60% that Alabama makes it into the college football playoff. So I think that the blueprint is laid out. Of course, Bama's going to need some help. I'm not really worried about the Big Ten. Ohio State, I think, will take care of the rest. I think they'll take care of the rest. I don't think that Minnesota is going to have an undefeated season or a one-loss season. I believe that they will lose to either Wisconsin or Iowa. And I think that even if they make it to the Big Ten championship game, which most likely it's looking like that, I think Ohio State will blow out Minnesota in the Big Ten championship. So I'm not even worried about Minnesota making it to the college football playoffs over Alabama. I'm really worried about Oregon, Utah, and Oklahoma. Those are the 3 schools that I'm worried about. And I think that there are potential upsets that I think could happen for all 3 of these schools. I think Oregon, the game to look out for is Arizona State. Of course, I can't forget about Georgia. Obviously, Auburn, A&M, and LSU are the games that you have to really look out for. And I think, of course, for Oklahoma, you got Oklahoma State and potentially playing Baylor twice. Because if Oklahoma loses another game, they're not getting in. So anyway, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed the rest of the video. Leave a like and share the video. It really helps me out. Again, guys, I'm just starting to do this. And again, you guys have really helped out my channel the last couple videos that I was able to make. So anyway, guys, that's all I got. This is Jant716. I'll catch you guys later.